Well, hi everyone, it's Kelly with Women for One, and today I am really excited to be speaking with Erin Weed. And Erin Weed, I think first and foremost, after I've had a discussion with her, is a mom, first of two little children, and is a well-known speaker, an award-winning speaker, and a social entrepreneur, and really a very wise woman that has taken some things that have happened to her in her life and changed the world for the better. So we're really excited to be speaking with you today, Erin. Welcome.
Oh, so much. It's an honor to be on your show.
Yeah. So you started Girls Fight Back, an organization dedicated to women and girls' safety. A company actually. Can you talk to me a little bit about the evolution and how that came to be?
Absolutely. So I was 22 years old, living in New York City. I grew up in Chicago and moved to New York. That was like my big dream, was to be a TV producer. And I wasn't even a year into my television production career when I got the news that one of my best friends had been murdered in her off-campus apartment at Eastern Illinois University, which is, by the way, a college in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a cornfield. And so it was really, really shocking and upsetting. And so I ended up basically going home for the funeral and realizing how afraid all of my friends were. And I remember distinctly sitting around this campfire and everybody's just terrified. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a huge piece of women's empowerment that's missing, is the fact that even though we were all strong, educated, badass chicks, we were sitting around a campfire talking about all the stuff that scared us. And all the stuff that scared us was things like walking to our car in the parking deck, or sleeping alone, or taking a shower when we're home alone. And I was just like, dudes don't think this,
No,
like dudes
they don't
sit around and talk about this. And, like, I always started feeling like, oh my gosh, like what would be possible if we didn't spend our time and our energy sitting around wondering if someone's going to rape us while we're napping, like, holy cow, like how can we like channel that into something that's just mind-blowingly, earth-shatteringly cool?
Right.
So that the emotion in that was really anger. I was just kind of like, why are we wasting our energy on being afraid? Well, there's a good reason, because people are getting murdered. So then I go through the wake and the funeral, and I really developed this resolve of we need more information. And so I started after I got through the wake and the funeral, I started to look around for resources where I could learn to defend myself.
And how old were you then?
22.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
And I was so afraid. I was afraid. I mean, a lot of people give me all sorts of hero credit for starting Girls Fight Back, and I don't deserve it, because really the reason I started this whole movement of women's safety education is because I couldn't walk down the street. I couldn't sleep through the night. I was developing an epic anxiety disorder, and that was not okay with me. And so I started learning how to defend myself, but most of the people I was learning from were these dudes, mostly, who were military, NYPD, Marines. And these guys are amazing, but I had nothing in common with them, and they frankly intimidated the shit out of me.
Okay. That makes sense, yeah.
I think most women are, to some degree. And
yeah.
So I started thinking, well, my background's PR and documentaries, and like, how could I tell a story that gives this kind of information, but gives it in a way that women aren't afraid? And so I started getting all these certifications to learn the self-defense, to teach the self-defense, and the more I learned, the more I realized how horribly marketed it was. And so I was like, well, if I put it together and I branded it in a fun, approachable way, and I made the content really fun and just enjoyable and empowering and not frightening, I was like, I wonder what could be possible.
Right.
And so I put together a seminar that was 90 minutes. It was basically a one-woman show. And I started traveling around the country giving this really hilarious presentation about ass kicking.
That's great.
It just worked, and people really enjoyed it, and they were learning, they were laughing. And it was a great therapy for me just to spread my friend whose murder's named Shannon McNamara, and to really tell the world her story, and not in a scary that you're all going to die sort of way, but in a way of, hey, something bad happened, and you know what, this was my wake-up call, but we all have a wake-up call. And maybe this seminar could be your wake-up call, so you don't have to wait for a friend to be murdered in order for you to wake up to this reality.
Right. Did you find that you had people that, when you went around to the seminar, that you had rape victims and other people that wanted to change their lives from what had happened to them, people that have been violently attacked?
Yeah, one of the hardest parts about starting Girls Fight Back was just realizing that there are so many survivors of such epic, horrible things out there. I never could have known just how many people are suffering in silence. And I have such compassion for every person I meet on the street now because of the amount of stories that I've heard. Like, no statistics will ever communicate just how many people are dealing with a silent battle inside of them.
It's so true. I started learning that about 8 years ago in a personal healing school I went to. But doing Women for One and launching it has made me really get that everybody is struggling. Everybody's got those stories inside of them, and I'm actually working on a talk right now about secrets and like holding those secrets and how much energy that you talked about, how much energy it takes to be afraid, but how much energy it takes to hold that all inside of you instead of just not having shame around it and actually sharing it to empower yourself, but also to empower the community and other people. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Or
I absolutely agree. I think it's challenging to not be who we really are, and even if who we really are in that moment is damaged or hurt or terrified, it just is. And to put on this brave face to the world is incredibly taxing.
Well, I just think first of all, it takes such courage to launch something like what you did, but also on the if you drill down into what you were doing, that terrifies me to even think about learning to fight back. So personally, like, it would be good for me to do something like that because to really hold that place, you know?
You know, it's so funny too. It's like I'm arguably one of the most highly trained women in the world in adrenal-based self-defense scenarios. So like adrenal-based meaning like you're getting attacked full force by a guy who's screaming at you in a padded suit. I mean, it's terrifying. And to this day, I hate it. To this day, if I have to go take a workshop, I am just like peeing in my pants. Like I don't enjoy it. I don't like anything about it. But I felt that my role after Shannon's situation was just to be an ambassador so that maybe women could connect with this information in a less scary way and see it more as a survival skill, like knowing how to swim, and less like something that's just like, you know, we're all going to die, you know, some sort of fear craze.
So scary that you can't even go to a class, which is what kind of I am.
Well, most women are, and you know, ever feel that way. You're essentially confronting one of the worst things that could possibly happen to you. Right. So it takes an incredible amount of bravery to show up. And the funny thing about Girls Fight Back seminars was that the way that we focused was, you know, we're speakers more than self-defense instructors because we focus on large crowds to be more of like a motivational speech, to be the gatekeeper between the women and these programs that are so intimidating. So it would be funny because I'd be in the bathroom before I'd be about to take the stage to like 1,000 people, and all these girls would be, because we focused on like 14 to 22 age groups, and so they're high school or college, and they'd be so mad to be having to come to Girls Fight Back, and they'd be in the bathroom all like, oh my god, I wish I was at home watching Jersey Shore right now, and instead I'm at this self-defense seminar. I'm like going to the bathroom like, oh boy. And at first it was like, as a 20-something, it totally would freak me out and be like, oh my gosh, these girls don't want to be here. They hate me already, and I haven't even taken the stage. And then as I got into my 30s, and I was like, this is baller. Like, I want to go out there.
This is fun. This is a challenge.
Fun.
Yeah. So, that's great. So really,
but by the end, they always loved it. So that was the challenge.
I know you were the founder. You're still the founder. You always will be the founder. But you sold the company last year and transitioned. And I wanted to bring up the motto that you always talk about because it goes right into and bridges right into your new company that I'd like to talk about. But the Speak Your Truth, Change the World. It's so simple. It's so aligned with what we're doing. Can you talk a little bit about where that came from for you?
Yeah, I mean, the whole Speak Your Truth, Change the World thing, I believe that is a universal truth. I mean, that is something that's just applicable for everyone. You don't have to have some sort of crazy story about your, you know, some sort of dramatic story about your friend being murdered. I mean, it doesn't require that in order to speak your truth. Your truth can simply be, it could be anything. It could be, I hate my job. I mean, it could be, you know, like...
Right.
But the funny thing about speaking one's truth is that the minute you speak it, it's almost like an act of consciousness. It's almost like you cannot hide anymore when you've just kind of essentially come out of the closet and just stated something. So a lot of people, they don't speak their truth because then it's going to make it real on a level that they're probably not comfortable with yet.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, but that really did start with Girls Fight Back because, you know what, I could have taken the stage and I could have developed that seminar and I could have blended in with all these badass I love to fight martial arts people, which they're all amazing individuals, but that's not me. That's not me. I mean, so I went up there and I was like, listen, I am a sorority president that got really pissed because my friend was killed. And beyond pissed, I was just terrified. And this has been my way to ease my fear, and I hope it eases yours too, because now you'll have a few tricks in your toolbox to whip out if anybody ever messes with you, okay? So, I mean, that was my truth, and it worked. It connected with people because it was very disarming, and it was just real.
Yeah, it's just the beauty of, like, that's what we're talking about here, is talking, really doing what it is that is inside of you, living your passion and speaking your truth. And it really is a lot more simple than people think, from what my experience, right? I mean, look, you're just being yourself. You're just doing what you felt like you needed to do to heal yourself. Yet, look what it did. It changed the world with what it did.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. And you know, in selling the company, I mean, I ran it and founded it, ran it for 12 years, and I'm so proud of it. And it's doing 10 times better without me than it was with me, and it's so awesome. And it's cool to just watch it thrive. And honestly, the cool thing about speaking one's truth, and even if you can go to the next step and really package it into something, whether it's a speech or a book or a program or what you've created for Women for One, is that even if by some horrible act of misfortune, like we were to get hit by a bus and it was, you know, we're gone, then it's like it can live on because it's an idea that applies to other people.
Right.
And I adopted that pretty early on, that this wasn't going to be the Erin Weed show. This needed to be Girls Fight Back. And I think that that's important.
I have a real deep respect for that, because I feel like we're here to kind of channel what needs to happen, and you can be the channel, you can learn from it. But I think one of the most lasting legacies you can leave is if you can walk away and have it stay existing and not make it about you.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really, it's a beautiful thing to be able to do that. And I remember, you know, doing nonprofits all these years, it was kind of like I would always kind of leave and it would fall apart. I'm like, what is wrong? What am I doing wrong? Well, I made it, not even about me, but it was like I didn't allow it to grow as its own entity. You know, I defined myself by it too much.
Sure.
Yeah. So you moved into your new companies, which I'd love for you to talk about as well. Can you talk about the name and everything?
Yeah, sure. So it's called Evoso, and it stands for Evolution Society. And it's really set up to help people get to their truth, to own their stories, to find their voice, and then speak their truth. And it really is a process, and our process is called Dig, Plant, Grow. And first we really dig into somebody's story, which essentially, if you take a dig workshop or you do a private dig with us, it's like we literally have you tell us your entire life story. And we put it up on sticky notes, and I have another person that's in the room with me, and she's scribing it. And I mean, we document your entire life story. And we put it all up on the window, and you start to see it unfold in sticky notes. It's pretty cool. And what we start to see is that as you see your story unfold, you start to really understand what your truth is. Like all these things that have a lot in common, like things that happened to you when you were a kid and how that turned into stuff that happens when you're an adult. I mean, it kind of turns into psychotherapy a little bit. It is like hardcore deep dive into what makes you tick. But what we find is that people have one life word. It's one word that the vibration of their life operates in. And so we get to your word, which is, by the way, never the word that you think it is. Ever.
Oh, I just thought of my words. That's why I was laughing. I was like, I bet I know what my word is.
Tell me. Maybe I'll dig you someday. But
yeah, I'd love to do it.
It's usually not. It's usually not a word that's like necessarily offensive to a person, but it's not very obvious. It's usually the word that comes to mind is something that you want to identify with.
Yes,
because
like balance. I was like, balance. Yeah. I've been searching for balance my whole life.
Okay, so your word is probably the opposite. No, I'm just kidding.
That's kind of cool. So you're surprised with what comes out of this process.
Yeah, usually our clients are. I mean, I've learned to not be surprised at all. But I've also learned that so many of us, by hearing so many people's stories, I've also learned that so many of us have different stories, but on some level we struggle with very similar things. Oh, yes. So it's a really cool job. But then my idea is like, okay, let's take what we learn in the dig. So let's take your word, and then my clients write a manifesto about why that's their word. And then for private clients, we also write a dig report on like our observations of what happened. Right. But then the next phase is plant. Okay, how do you take your truth and how do you turn that into something? Whether it's a business, a book, a blog, a speech. and make it relevant for other people. So then we plant you, and then finally we grow you, which is, okay, now that you've gone through the trouble of figuring out what your truth is, package it into something, how do we get it out to the world in a sustainable way for both impact and income? So so that's really what we've been doing, and what we're kind of known for at this point is kind of being the people behind the curtain of some pretty exciting TED Talks that have been really well received. And it's, as much as I would love to be able to take credit for that, it's the process. It's the process that these people are willing to go through and do the deep dive into their dig. And out of that just comes their truth. And once your truth has license to drive, I mean, you cannot put out good content. You can't put out bad content when your truth is driving. It might be questionable content. It might be, like getting people fired up, provocative, but it's never going to be bad.
Right. So I have so many questions when you talk about this. What is the, first of all, how did this process evolve? Like, where did it come from for you? Did it happen for you and you decided to create this?
It all kind of happened. It just kind of came to me kind of, I don't know. I started coaching TED speakers. My first client ever was this woman named Erica Napolitano. And she writes a blog called Redhead Writing. And she writes for Entrepreneur Magazine. She wrote a book called The Power of Unpopular. And she's a polarizing figure. She is, I mean, she drops F-bombs with reckless abandon. She is opinionated, and she's brilliant, and she will take on anybody. So I love her like a sister. And I had the opportunity to work with her on her TED Talk, and it did incredibly well. It was basically getting people the permission to make the unpopular choice.
Right.
When a lot of us, that's what our truth is. Our truth is not popular usually. Most people's truths does not fall within the paradigms of today's functioning world.
I love that. Most people's truths does not follow in the paradigms of today's functional. I was just talking to somebody about that the other day. It's so true.
It's true. And that's why we live in a society with an epic depression and anxiety rate, because we're trying to fit into a box that we don't belong in. And on top of that, we feel the shame and embarrassment of not belonging. And so it's multi-layered. And it's really the truth, like you said earlier. I mean, it's not hard per se. It's difficult, but it's not hard. It's usually quite simple, but it doesn't mean the road is simple.
Right.
So, but anyway, get back to your question. So I started doing this in working with Erica because I started recognizing, okay, this woman has a phenomenal story, and she's got these huge truths. And a lot of us, sometimes we have so many stories, so many truths that it's just like swirling around.
Yeah.
The problem is that I personally don't believe that anybody should write a speech by themselves. I don't think it's possible. I mean, grant it is possible. You can. But I believe that we need to pull stuff out of each other, and that we need to get out of our own damn heads, because we are such a thinking society. And those aren't going to be the blog posts and the speeches and the books that are going to be so compelling. What's going to be compelling is what comes out of here, but that's the harder stuff to access.
Right.
So I started doing this with Erica. So she was kind of my little lab rat, and she still is. And her TED Talk did phenomenally well. And then that turned into a bunch of other speakers. One of our recent speakers is Ash Beckham, that we did a dig on her. And then her TED Talk, which she did at TEDx Boulder, went viral. It got picked up by Upworthy. It's now been seen by almost 5 million people, and was just featured on the homepage of TED.com. And again, I don't take credit for that, but I mean, it definitely is a testimony to the process of doing the dig, figuring out your story, owning it, finding your voice, packaging it, sharing your truth with the world. And now she has a booming speaking career that we've been able to help her develop, get her friend with an agent, so that she can keep putting this truth out to the world, because it's obviously hitting a nerve with people. Right.
So that's kind of where it came from. Because I guess when you spoke about your company, first thing is, well, how is she different than a coach compared to the, dig, plant, grow process? And you had told me in our previous conversation about a distinction that's very clear for you that I wanted you to talk about. Do you remember when you were talking about that slight distinction when I was asking you about dig, plant, grow? You said we do it almost reversed of some people.
Oh, yes. Okay. So thank you for these supporting questions. I struggle with titles a little bit when it comes to coaches and all this stuff.
Right.
I mean, what I'm really good at is helping people get to that thing that they really need to say. But in our, especially in our business world, hell, even in our personal world, we tend to focus on who's going to hear what we're going to have to say.
Right.
instead of what we need to say. So what we do is we tend to work in a way where we're like, okay, well, who's the audience? Now let's work backwards. So this is the audience, and this is the demographic, and it's going to be a white male who's 45 and in this income bracket. And also, well, what does he want to hear? Well, then we start forming ourselves to be enjoyable for him. I find that to be problematic. I mean, it can be good marketing, but at some point in the line, it turns inauthentic because we start to be like, okay, well, I just created this great like package program, whatever you offer to this person, but that's not necessarily what I really bring to the table.
Right.
So a lot of like really famous people out there. I mean, I work with a lot of celebrities and people that have built 7-figure online businesses, and they're known for the thing that they don't freaking care about. And
right. No, I know. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing, and but I have such compassion for them because it's almost like they're too good at marketing for their own good, and you can essentially trap yourself into an inauthentic truth. The good news, though, is that it is never too late.
Right.
It's never too late to do a dig, and I'm not saying you have to dig with Evoso. You can do a dig within yourself and just be like, what's my truth? And, start living it. It's usually terrifying, but...
Well, I would love to go through your process because it sounds so unique. And I love that you don't like to label yourself. You really just take people through their own process to discover that truth and speak it and live it. And so it was really interesting what you were just saying about how people form from the population that they're serving, right? That's true in the personal world as well, right? I see, and this is one of the reasons I started Women for One, I see, and I was one of them, all these women that are living the idealized image life, that try to be the perfect wife, the perfect sister, the perfect friend, the perfect mom. And then I woke up and I was like, I don't know who I am now.
Yeah.
What happened? Where did, that Talking Head song? Who is my beautiful wife? So I get that. It's like the same kind of thing, right? You go the other way. And all of a sudden, where are you?
Yeah, totally.
And so it really resonates with me when you talk about it that way, for not just business and professionals, right? It's really about your personal truth as well. Do you ever work with people that aren't doing TED Talks, just regular, not like TED Talk people aren't regular, but you know what I'm saying? Like people that don't want to go speak to millions of people, that just really want to live their truth.
Well, the answer is yes. I mean, some people, they introduce me. It's funny not having a title, really. People introduce me to all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, somebody introduced me as, like, their career counselor. I'm like, really? Okay. I'll help you figure out where you need to be when you grow up. All right, we'll do that. But, I mean, let's take Ash Beckham, for example. I mean, she's, I think last I heard, she's, like, the 20th most viewed TED Talk of all time.
Wow.
And you know what she does for a living? She owns a company that organizes softball tournaments in the Midwest. Like, she talks about gay issues and how everybody has a closet, and it's basically a secret that we're all walking around with. And all a closet is a hard conversation. And that truth that emerged from her dig resonated with millions and millions of people. And no one had ever heard of her, you know? So I was just meeting with some top speakers bureaus in Washington, D.C. recently, and I was pitching them some of my clients who, by all intents and purposes are nobody because they haven't heard of them, and they're not Colin Powell, and they're not making $50,000 a talk. In fact, they haven't even spoken to a brownie troupe yet. But they're legit and they have this huge truth to say. And I was telling these executives of these speakers bureaus who were basically complaining about their revenues and just saying the business is tanking. And I was like, listen, you have different talent that's going to be coming in, and it's people that are everyday people that have the balls to stand up and say what they believe and live their truth and not do it in a way that has to take somebody else down. It's just they speak their truth without it needing to be your truth. And this is going to be your future speaker roster. So just saying.
Right, just saying. Just saying.
It's like, here's my card. Bye-bye.
How was that response? Was that a good response?
They loved it, actually. I mean,
I'm sure they did.
Hey, when something's not working, sometimes you have to look at the alternative. So, but yeah, anybody can really benefit from a dig, and I believe anybody can speak their truth. And you know what? Even if what comes out of a dig is simply just having a hard conversation with somebody, it's I mean, it's different having a hard conversation with somebody when your defenses are up and you're ready to fight and you're ready to defend yourself, versus just, hey, this is my truth and I'm sorry if this hurts you, but.
Isn't that the truth? I speak, pardon the pun, the word, but I was just thinking about this today. I was talking to my best friend and she said, what did she was talking about an issue that she was deciding whether she was going to confront somebody. And I was just thinking about the same thing. And I was like, I'm at the age now at 45. It's like, well, you have one of two choices. You can speak your truth if you really feel like it's necessary, and you can make that choice, or you can make a choice to let it go. So usually instead of being reactionary, I'll be like, just sit with it. Just sit with it for a week. I don't have to react and attack. I can really look at what it is for me. And then I made a decision today with one of my friends. I was like, yeah, I haven't let it go. I have to speak. But, I have to speak my truth about it. It's like one of two choices. It feels very empowering to be that way than, oh my gosh, I have to hold this resentment, or oh my gosh, I have to internalize this and make them the bad guy. I mean, it's really just about choice. And
I think they're also there should be kind of an intermediate step between those things, between should I let it go or should I confront? It should be kind of thank it.
Thank it.
Thank it. I mean, thank you, horrible situation that was presented into my life. Thank you, best friend that just canceled lunch on me for the 20th time, and I obviously have no value in their,
in their life. Yeah. No, it was I always go into that growth place of like, wow, this is another learning. But I was actually really thankful that now I'm at the point where I don't have to react. I'm baby stepping it, where I'm like, I was like, I didn't react. Woo! I stopped and looked at it, sat with it, didn't make them bad, but allowed it to just sit instead of reacting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So,
you know what? Think about it. One of my clients, he always says he's a really successful CEO, and he speaks on, his name is Steve Satterwhite, and he always speaks on things around treating your employees well, and he always says, you know what, all employees all adults is just like these grown-up kids that have mortgages and car payments, but we're really all just these emotional children walking around.
Isn't it the truth?
And we all just carry our wounds into everything, and it's...
Well, I learned that the most when I met my husband, who's a former CEO, and he's 10 years older than me, and I was like, oh, he's an old business guy. I'm not into him. I wasn't interested at first. And I got to know him, and he just has this sweet, loving heart. But, on the outside, when some of my friends meet him, they're like, oh, he's a business guy that was a CEO, and it's like, no, he's just a little boy that wants, that is trying to do the best he can, It was a really good learning for me. So, yeah. But, I have one more question around women internationally. I wanted to ask you, we have a large following in the Middle East, a very large following, and we're really excited over there because women are beginning to share their stories and step into what they feel is their own vision for their life moving forward. And I didn't want to just go back to Girls Fight Back, but integrating both the Evoso and the Girls Fight Back, what kind of advice would you give to a woman over there that is going through a lot of political struggles, a lot of oppression, but yet they're very educated. There are many educated women over there that are making changes, that are empowered, that are connected through the internet throughout the world. I always like to ask the people that I speak with what you would say to them, especially with the experience that you have.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. One of the organizations that I've been helping out with a little bit, it's called Imprint Movement, and they're based in Egypt, and they are going to be Unreasonable Institute fellows. I don't know if you've ever heard of Unreasonable Institute, but they basically bring social entrepreneurs from all over the world to Boulder for 6 weeks every summer, and they fly in all these amazing mentors, like big shot CEO types from all these major companies, to be their mentor and to help them start their venture. And Imprint Movement is a women's safety and self-defense organization that's launching in Egypt, which is extremely difficult.
Wow.
And, yeah. Almost to the point they brought me in to help, give them some advice. I'm like, I'm going to tell you how it goes down here in the United States, but
right.
please take this with a grain of salt, because I get that you're dealing with stuff that I have never been through before. But that said, I mean, the advice that I would give anybody who's in a position where they need to make change and they have constrictions is just keep going. And, you know, I look at these things. I used to work at Ashoka as a consultant. It's like an international nonprofit that focuses on social entrepreneurs. And so I was basically a business coach to women and men all over the world that were starting these social enterprises.
Right.
And just having conversations with people around, okay, do I pay off the government or not pay off the government in order to get my papers filed in order to start a business? And it's just like having those conversations, it's just so mind-blowing for people in the United States. But half the time my advice would just be keep going. You know, sometimes you got to play the game. Keep going. Sometimes you're going to go to bed feeling, well, I nailed it today, and keep going. And sometimes you're going to go to bed being like, I suck today. Keep going.
Right.
And that's really all we can do sometimes.
And it made me think of it because I've connected with so many women over there at so many levels, Erin. We're so similar, even from different cultures. You know, I mean, I need to hear that. Keep going. You know, and a lot of times I tell my children not to minimize their issues, but or I tell myself, first world problems, Kelly. Like, really, big picture, let's step back and look. And I think even controversially, I could say, they can say that as well. I mean, they you know, it's a whole different culture and it's a different way of being. And the women there are so phenomenally empowered in a way that I find young women in our country aren't in some ways, because they have something to push against. Sure. You know, we can avoid it. Yep. They can't. Yeah. I mean, we think we can avoid it, right? We can't. Yeah. But, you know, we're under the illusion we're safe all the time. Yeah. Except if something happens like what happened to you. Yep. But they can't. They deal with it every day. So it's a beautiful thing to say. Just keep going.
Keep going.
And what a neat, it's imprint movement. I would love to look into that.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing. They're doing some good stuff.
Well, is there anything that you have coming up that you're doing in the U.S. that that you're speaking, or projects that you're working on other than Evoso that we can connect with?
Yeah, I mean, Evoso is very much still a startup. I mean, we're doing incredibly well. We're very busy, but we're kind of still nailing down our system and also figuring out what kind of resources do people need beyond the digs, and figuring out how we can fulfill on that. So we've really only been up and going for about 6 months.
Wow.
Which has been fun. But we are currently offering digs. So we do either private digs or dig workshops in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
So those are probably the main ways to engage with us at this moment. So
Evoso.com.
Evoso.com, and
it'll be on our site when we post this.
Good.
Great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It was great to talk to you. I could talk to you for hours, as we almost did the other day.
Yeah.
So, it was great to connect, and I wish you all the best, and thank you for everything you're doing for women in the world.
Thank you so much, and you too.
Keep
going.
Keep going. Thanks. Bye.
All right, bye.